Welcome, welcome, everybody. Make sure I'm not too close here to the camera. Okay, hello artists, welcome. Another reminder that what's happening here on my Facebook page is I am doing a live 20-day painting challenge and you are invited to join in. You can either just enjoy these and get some inspiration from them, get some education from them. My gift to you for the month of February. And also the other reason why I'm doing this, of course, is for my own well-being. After, the busyness of the holidays and the long stay trip that I had in Europe, and then moving clear across country from Colorado to Connecticut, whenever we got back, January kind of disappeared for me a bit. And I was also kind of feeling like I was struggling to get back into a regular routine and feel creative and feel inspired again. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this February challenge. And whenever I hosted a call for my Art Life School members in January, it seemed like a lot of those artists too were perhaps struggling to kind of get back into the groove, get back into a schedule after the holiday season and tap back into that creativity. So yeah, so that's what we're doing here. I'm going to be every day, Monday through Friday, through the month of February at 10 a.m. Eastern. So the best thing for you to do, hi, good morning, Dinah. Hi, Arena. The best thing for you to do is make sure that you have liked Kelly Folsom Art Life School Facebook page where you're seeing this video, and click turn on your notifications to be notified for these videos, okay? Also, good morning. Yay, more roses. Yes, and I have something to say about that. Before I get into the painting and demonstration and all of that, I do also want to mention that every week I'm going to be giving away a free DVD of art lessons to one subscriber on my email list. If you know that you're an Art Life School student, you're automatically included. You don't need to, you're already on the list basically, so you're already included. If you know you're on the list, then you're already included. If you're like, I don't know if I'm on the list, go to Art Life with Kelly, Kelli, and sign up for any of the freebies that are there. There is a free oil painting for beginners masterclass. There is a free 5-day challenge that you can sign up for as well. There's a couple of other goodies you can sign up for on that website, artlifewithkelly.com. I've got the link in the description box here on this video. And this DVD features 5 different lessons, 5? Yes, 5. 5 different lessons on this video, which are really, really good. So I'm going to be gifting one of those a week throughout the month of February to one subscriber on my list. All right, welcome everybody. And one more announcement. Oh no, Maria, you have a broken rib. Oh, you poor thing. I'm sending you so much love and prayers for healing on that. That is horrible. Please, please, please take care of yourself and rest up. So one more announcement is live this week inside the Art Life School community. For Art Life School members, we are doing a very special, our monthly live 2-day workshop, which we have these every month inside the Art Life School. And this time in February, the theme is going to be on Valentine's treats. I'm super excited. I don't paint a lot of food type of items, but I think it's time. I've done some, but I'm excited to pull in, maybe do like a Valentine's cake, or maybe even some macaroons, in also spirit of my recent trip to Paris. So if you're interested in that, then definitely go check out artlifewithkelly.com. Check out the Art Life School membership. You can get signed up there if you want to join in on the fun for that workshop. Those demos are about an hour and a half long, and then we also have a Q&A call the following Monday to get feedback on your work or just answer any other questions that might not have gotten answered during the live workshop. All right, so that is all of the announcements. On with the painting. Good morning. Okay, I've got my tablet here so I can see who's coming in, because I think that Facebook has taken away the mirror image. If anybody knows anything about that, please let me know. Me and my assistant researched this yesterday, and we could not figure out what has happened to that feature. So I do have my tablet though open here so that I can see questions and comments along the way. Let's just do a check-in if you're here on a scale of 1 to 10. Like how inspired are you feeling right now when it comes to your painting and your creativity? 1 being like a 0, or you could do 0 to 10. Like I got nut and honey. And a 10 being like, I am inspired, I'm creating almost every day, I can't wait, I'm constantly thinking about the next thing I'm gonna paint, so that would be like I'm a fired up, I'm so on fire creatively right now, I'm totally in flow, and unstoppable would be a 10, right? And the 0 would be like, I don't even call myself an artist anymore because it's been so long since I painted, So let me know, scale of 1 to 10, where you're at. And again, no judgment on this. Sometimes it's just about like awareness. And if somebody else is answering like, I'm a 10, don't feel bad if you're at a 0 or if you're at a 2 or a 3 or a 4, and 10s don't feel bad too for being at a 10. It's great that you're at a 10. And here's the other thing I want to say about this is like everybody goes through ebbs and flows when it comes to your creativity. There's things that we can do to kind of nurture some amount of consistency, but everybody is still going to go through highs and lows to some degree when it comes to your creativity and being in that flow state. All right, so great. Thank you so much. Getting some answers here. Elizabeth says 3. Marion says 4. Connie says 5. I think Maria had said 10. I've lost. Let me open this up bigger. Yeah, so just check in. To go through. Hi. Let us know where you're at. And if you want to share anything else, you can, share maybe why you think you're in that spot. Sometimes it is life changes. Okay, good. Yeah. Kathy says she's a 1. Arena says she's an 8. Awesome. And, Arena, I know you have been one who's been very open, and not that you have to be open here on the Facebook Live, but inside of our community about times whenever you have been on that really low level, right? So sometimes it's life circumstances, maybe big changes that are going on in our life, sometimes even in our physical health. Maria Dorigo was just saying she's laid up in bed with a broken rib. That can really take the wind out of your sails, right? So if you are on that lower level, like what is a loving kindness thing that you can do for yourself today? It doesn't help for us to like beat ourselves up or even shame ourselves for, oh, I should be this way, I should be doing this. So the first things first is just bringing some gentleness, some compassion, some loving kindness to yourself if you're on the lower end of the inspiration scale right now, creativity scale. Good morning, everybody. So good to see all of you here today. All right. Manet says about 3, painting almost daily, but nothing good coming out. Yes, yes. So sometimes that can really kind of start to dampen our spirits as well. Like we feel like we're putting in the effort and the work, and maybe we're at a plateau and maybe we're just not seeing as much growth as we were at another time. So again, growth also comes in, ebbs and flows and kind of highs and lows as well, right? So sometimes we might really feel like we're expanding a great deal and growing a great deal towards our mastery. And then other times we feel like, oh, why is this so hard? And all of that is completely normal and natural, just so you know. Every artist who's ever, become a professional at master level artist knows this and has experienced this too. So don't let anybody fool you and tell you otherwise. Oh, I've frozen up here on my tablet. So I would say too, after just bringing some loving kindness and awareness to yourself and where you're at, and if you're at a 10, like just, celebrating that, being grateful for that, is a good idea too. But the next step I would say is just looking at, if you're really on the low scale, what's something that sounds fun? And an journal exercise you might try is just writing down 10 things I would love to try creatively. It doesn't even have to be painting. Again, sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves, and if we're at a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, this is what I would recommend is the best place to start, is just find something that can engage that creative side of your mind, something that you can look forward to and get excited about, even if it's just a little tiny bit. It might even be, doing something from your childhood that you used to love to do. Maybe it's coloring in a coloring book. Maybe it's playing with Play-Doh. A couple weeks ago, I got a kid's pottery wheel to play around, just getting my hands, into the clay and just trying something new that sounded fun to me, right? And the thing we have to watch out for whenever we're trying to ease our way back to creative flow and creative health is that sometimes the things that we need to do to get back to that health may seem really silly, and that one side of us might go, oh, this is silly. This isn't contributing to your mastery at all. Well, when we're at below a 5 on that creative flow scale, you really don't need to worry about performance or mastery if you're at that level. Okay, so that could also be part of the problem, is just, maybe you've put too many high standards, too many high expectations, too much, pressure on yourself to perform, to meet up to a standard, damn it, I want to see growth today in my work. Ugh. And man, have I been there so many times. And plateaus can really be the hardest because they feel super long. And what I'll say about plateaus is they are required for mastery. You have to go through plateaus to get to mastery. You have to endure that kind of discomfort that comes with feeling like you're stuck. Right? And so that is part of the price tag of getting to mastery. But sometimes, you have to also allow yourself to not force too much, not put too much pressure on yourself, and see, can I just kind of relax a bit? Maybe I can try something else or play with a different media, maybe get off oils and try some watercolor or pastel today. How can I lighten the pressure here? How can I just bring some childlike, lighthearted fun, enjoy to it? So that would be my advice if you're at a 5 or, or below a 5. I would say, 0 to 4, especially 0 to 3. If you're kind of in the middle range, 5 to 7, it may actually be that you are in a plateau right now, and you do need to kind of stretch yourself further and try to challenge yourself more towards mastery. Because what we know also is that, as human beings, and this has scientifically been proven, that we will get bored if we're not pushing ourselves enough. I know it seems like, wait, you just said if we push ourselves too much, we might burn out or we might lose the joy. Yes, this is the balance of living a creative life, right? It's like, if it's all just if every time you show up, it feels like, this is not very challenging. It's not really requiring me to do much of anything. It's like finger painting every day. It's just all too easy. You're going to lose interest, actually. So all of us as human beings do also need that challenge as well. So those are just some tips, depending on where you're at. And if you are a super smart, logical, achieving type of gal or guy, I also encourage you to, no matter where you're at on the scale, to really also embrace that variety and playfulness. Try to bring something like that in at least once a week into your creative practice. Just something that feels kind of fun and maybe even feels silly. Again, it doesn't even have to be, painting related. It could be, maybe you want to go forage for leaves on a walk, or maybe you want to take a floral arranging class, or, something different, but it feeds into your art making as well. Even if you're not sure how, it does feed your creative practice when it comes to painting. Okay, so the flip side of variety, which is what I wanted to talk about today with what I'm doing. The flip side of variety when it comes to mastery is that you have to have enough familiarity. Also, the opposite, right? You have to have enough familiarity, consistency, and repetition in order to get to mastery. So if you're kind of mid to higher level of the scale, you want to make sure that you're really pushing towards mastery enough right now. Okay, and if you're below number 5 on the scale, I would say don't worry about this so much. Try to bring in more fun and more variety and just get those creative juices flowing. So, but mastery requires familiarity and repetition. So that's why today I am working once again on these pink roses. Now, this is something I learned very early on in my development, and years ago, whenever I decided, you know what, I am going to really work towards getting better at painting roses and mostly overcome my fear of painting roses. And so I just fully committed to painting roses. This was several months, of me just doing a deep dive, an intentional study, an intentional practice on getting better at painting roses. Now, obviously, there's so many ways that you can bring in variety with painting roses. Obviously, you can be like, okay, I'm painting these pink roses this week. I bought a bunch of roses, and I'm actually going to bring in variety by seeing how many different ways I can compose them. Trying different compositions, trying different color schemes, trying different mixtures of subject matter. Do they always have to be in a vase? These are ways that you can get consistency and familiarity to work towards mastery, but also bring in some of that playful variety as well, so that it doesn't get boring and too, redundant. If you're like somebody like me who, I love variety, that's really important to me. But if you are just changing up everything all the time, like if you're painting roses, let's say you determine you want to get better at painting roses or another kind of flower, but you're not getting enough consistent practice in the study of them, you're probably not going to see as much improvement or as much growth there. Okay, so that's another tip for those of you who are really right now going, yeah, I really would like to improve in this area. You want to make sure you do a deep dive on that. And I would say probably at least 50% of your study time, creative time, you want to commit to that particular topic or that particular subject if you really want to see improvement there. And then maybe the other half of the time you can, paint other things or whatever to bring them. All right, Mayonnaise says, now you're talking my language. Roses are my biggest headache, but I keep wanting to paint them. Awesome. Yeah, and also like we've got to start somewhere. And then we also, I would say, create a plan for yourself, Manet or anybody else who is wanting to get better at roses. Create a plan for yourself of, how are you going to do that? Week one, I'm going to do this. Week two, I'm going to do this. Week three, I'm going to do this. Kind of put yourself on a rose painting performance improvement plan, right? Give yourself a PIP plan. All right, Lynn, good morning. So good to see you. Okay, let's dive in and push some paint around, shall we? So let me know, out of those tips that I just shared, which one really kind of stuck with you? Which one are you going to take away and try this week? Do you feel like you need more play, more variety? to get those juices flowing, even if it's not painting related? Do you feel like you need to push more towards mastery and do kind of a deep dive focus on something? Do you feel like you need more consistency? Let me know in the comments below. What's one thing you're going to walk away with today that you can implement in your art practice, in your art life? More play, Lucy says. Awesome. Love that. More play, more play. And so another good exercise, if you are unsure of, well, I want to play more, but I'm not sure how, is just to kind of start making a list, write down 10 things that are pulling my curiosity right now. Again, it could be something like going roller skating, you know, just try not to censor yourself or make it too logical if you're going for the play route. I think that's the main key. All right, I'm going to tone this canvas with my liquid light gel. I'm working on 8 by 10 here. And you're welcome to paint along. You're welcome to just listen or ask questions, whatever it is that you need today. Trust that it's perfect for you. If you feel like, I just don't have it in me to paint this or to paint this today, that's okay. Just trust that it's all perfect. You're right where you need to be. Sometimes whenever we just try to force ourselves or force it, it just makes it worse. Have you ever noticed that? So if you're dealing with any resistance, fear, procrastination, instead of trying to kind of force yourself into submission, see if you can just allow it to be there. Just allow, kind of breathe into that procrastination and say, I see you here. And kind of imagine it, allowing it space to get as big as it needs to get. Whether that's fear, whether that's perfectionism. And then you also might just ask, that side of you, that part of you that is being perfectionistic or procrastinating or fearful. Like, what do I need to know? What do you want to tell me? Do you want to tell me anything? What are you afraid of? It's okay. It's okay to feel resistance. It's okay to feel fear. There's that phrase, I'm sure you probably have heard it, whatever we resist persists, right? So just kind of, and what's interesting is whenever you allow it space and grace, you'll notice it actually begin to feel, you start to feel more at ease and more comfortable. It actually dissipates the energy of it, the feeling of it, just by giving yourself that permission. Okay. Lorraine says, roses, overcoming my need to follow the norm and just doing what I do. Love that. Yeah. Being true to ourselves and listening to our own intuition and our own creativity is super important. Hello, Jean-Pierre. Good morning. Good morning. Kathy Kapler. Good morning. Anne Ella. This is a ampersand gesso board. Museum series. They are gessoed. They're kind of dry, to be honest. In my opinion, they're dry because it's kind of a cheap gesso, even though these are some of the better boards you can actually get on the market, pre-made, pre-gessoed. So that's what I'm working on. And I've just toned this with raw umber. These will, of course, be recorded. And if you miss anything, you can watch on replay for the month of February. And if you decide that you want to paint along to any of them, then you can always come back. So don't worry. If you feel like, oh no, I'm behind, I didn't know this was going to be on. And you can mark your calendar every morning at 10 a.m. this month. I'll be doing something like this. And I don't know what I'll be painting. I'm just going with the flow. Like Lorraine just said, just kind of going with the flow of what feels, right to me that day, what feels inspiring. Might be a landscape, might be a floral like this. Who knows? Who knows what it'll be? All right, so just getting my drawing started here with these big, simple shapes, and most importantly at this stage, the gesture and the movement. If you want more movement in your paintings, and florals are a great way to play. Florals or leaves, things like that are a great way to play with movement in a still life. Go for movement right away. Don't start off stiff. Look for gesture and maybe even exaggerate that movement even more. If it's like an S curve, or this rose feels like it's kind of curving this way and this one feels like it's curving this way, maybe even exaggerate that further. You're trying to pull out, what is inspiring you about this piece. Okay, and I'm just using this raw umber just to kind of do sort of like a little tonal value scale to get started. But very abbreviated version of, kind of an underpainting. Not super precise, just the big shapes, the big masses, and the big, movements of the piece. And I like that this little baby rose is down here. If you struggle with staying consistent long enough with the subject matter, one tip I've found that's helped me is, investing in, say, fresh flowers, for example, if it's flowers that you're wanting to get better at. For some people, they need to really get the most beautiful flowers on the market. And not even for some people. Sometimes it's going to be different just for each individual. Like at one time, you might, a $10 bouquet of little pink roses like this from the grocery store is enough, and it's going to last, most of the week, and you can really get a lot of practice in with them. And other times you might want to just go whole hog, as they would say in my home state of Texas. Whole hog, and get a really beautiful, expensive, maybe some David Austin roses. As long as that doesn't put too much pressure on you to perform, or to feel like if the paintings don't turn out that you wasted them or something. So just pay attention to the psychological side of things when it comes to creating. It is really, really important. Okay, I'm just using some ivory black. Yes, this is 8x10 today. I need to order some little 6x8s too. I didn't realize I was out of those. I used all of those up for my landscape paintings in Europe. I got this color that I think I'm going to play with in the background. I was kind of thinking, oh, maybe I want to, have this be really feminine. I've got a gray background cloth up there right now, which, if this color doesn't work or if it's too strong, I can definitely tone down the background. But this is Amethyst Parma by Charvan Paris oil paints. And it's kind of like a little lavender color. So I think I'm going to play with that in the background. I might tone it down a bit here and there. But I thought that might be kind of different. So again, that's just another example of like, how can you maybe paint something that you are, you know, painting kind of a series of, or you're trying to get better at. And, but how can you bring in maybe a little bit of fun and a little bit of variety? I think this is something that's really overlooked. You know, you don't want to get stuck in a rut where you feel like, you know, there's no experimentation or you can't play at all and it's all so serious, you know. So you just need to listen to yourself, your creative self. What does it need today? Does it need to play more? Does it need, or does it need to, you know, push for more seriousness? You know, it will tell you, you know, your creative spirit will tell you. So I'm just using this straight out of the tube for now, just to get some of this violet kind of purple color established back here. I think it's kind of fun. And I try to watch out anything getting too close to the edges, unless I'm going to go off the canvas and do more of a cropped look. You want to decide either way. Do you want to do a cropped look or not? Being too in the middle about that decision will create problems. I'm just going to carve out this black vase a little more clearly here. It's such a beautiful color, isn't it? And they really do make gorgeous paint. Since this isn't a color that I would have on my everyday palette, I'm not going to, you know, kind of find a spot for it because this is definitely not a color I would use all the time. So the colors that you see a spot for on my palette are colors that I would use more regularly. And maybe not on every painting, but so this is also how, you know, I think works best to draw in paint is, which is why I don't think it's a good idea to, you know, agonize over precise drawing in the beginning of the painting, is to create, you know, a shape that is close enough to what you want. Now I'm just trying to kind of work around where maybe these stems might be. But then you come back in with that background color and kind of carve out more clarity on those shapes. That tends to make a nicer edge whenever you do that. So if you're wanting to push more towards mastery, another thing you can challenge yourself with might be something like symmetry. You know, do you feel like your symmetry could be better? You know, that might be one small way that you can challenge yourself more to mastery today. Just one example. I've pretty much got the camera as close as it can get, Lucy, without being like on my palette. Let me see if I can do a little bit closer. That's definitely as close as I can get. Yeah, so these are Facebook Lives, so you know we're just going to get as good as we can get on them. It's very different from the pre-recorded lessons. Okay, let's see here. I'm not really sure what color I want to make the tabletop yet, so I'm just going to leave it the raw umber for now. Something maybe in a red violet might be nice. And then I will mix a little bit of this lavender color I'm using. And if you don't have this color, the color I would recommend you mix up might be alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, tiny bit of black, and some white. Try that. It's basically like a really light, pale lavender. So ultramarine blue and alizarin will give you a purple. The white will lighten it. And if it's too saturated of a purple, you can add a pinch of, you know, ivory black or even a pinch of like a raw umber into it to tone it down. Thought I would throw that in there. There's always a way to mix these pre-mixed colors that you can buy that are pre-made if you don't have them. I'm just going to get some of this reflected light of the background into the top plane. Without going too light in value. But this is, you know, a very reflective vase. So it'd be nice to get some of that high key light that's in the background reflected into the vase. It's going to let all of this be a little softer and blurrier as we get up closer to the roses. Okay, make sure you wipe that white out of your brush if you want to go back darker. Otherwise it can get kind of chalky and milky on you. Personally, I don't like to clean my brush. I just like to wipe it with a paper towel. But you can really create all of these lovely gradations just wet into wet. Okay. So I'm going to go in for some of the color. This is going to be a bit different from yesterday's too, because yesterday's was against like more about light against dark of the background. And also the front face of the roses, we really weren't seeing that much because those were in shadow, you know, the open part of the roses. So today is kind of more about, you know, all of those little rose petals and more color is showing up today. All right. So that's just cadmium red light and some white, little tiny bit of alizarin crimson. I'm going to pull in some raw umber and cab red light. And let's grab some of that purple color, or just some white will be fine if you don't have it. But once I have the background color down, one key to these roses is using the background color in the roses, especially in the shadow planes. I could take that a little bit darker. You can either use ivory black with the cab red light, or you can use some raw umber to kind of get it a little more neutral. This far edge against the background, you want that to go a little bit darker there to get contrast. Same thing up here. And they're kind of like a cylinder in a way. Like if you had a boiled egg and you kind of cut the top off flatter. That's the basic shape of these roses. So I'm going in here and looking for some of these shadows and just getting them started with a basic color and a basic value. Most importantly is just getting in the ballpark. You know, you're going to see a lot of things happening. You're going to see reflected lights. Gosh, you're just going to see all kinds of stuff going on in those colors, especially the longer you stare at each individual rose, which I recommend you don't do. That you just try to start each rose with, you know, what's the shape of the dark, the shape of it, the contrast against the background, value contrast, and what is, you know, a believable color, I would say, for the local color. Because you can always adjust as you're going on here. Basically, you're kind of looking for kind of a warm violet red for your shadows. On these pink roses, I am standing up, so I'm slightly looking down on them just a little bit. But you do want to start these shadows so that your lights make sense, and the shadows also give contrast against the background, which is so important, and give shape to the rose. You cannot paint all of these roses, you know, bright pink. You have to have the shadows in there for it to work. And then on this rose, you've got this side plane here. My light's coming from the top left. We've got this side plane here. It's in shadow just a little bit that we're seeing. And then on the inside of the petal, that bigger petal that's opened up, there's some shadow in there. Okay. And my background color is never set in stone. Well, the value, I would say. So I can always, take some parts of the background a little darker, or in this case, probably not much lighter. But it can definitely go a little darker in places if I decide for it to. And you can see I was using my paper towel as well to kind of wipe away shapes of the light. So like here, what's the shape of these two petals together? You try to find ways that lights connect and shadows connect so that you have bigger holistic shapes on your in your painting. What is the shape of those two petals together, or three petals, or whatever the case may be? Okay, down below the roses that are on the ground plane, let's take a look at those. I'm going to go a little bit darker on this shadow down here for this little rosebud. The back of the rose in shadow, and then the side plane, the bottom of the rose. These kind of roses are really pretty to paint dried as well. And you can still learn a lot about painting roses, even if they're dried. I know sometimes people don't want to spend the money to buy real roses, but I do think, you can really get the most out of them by making sure that you paint several paintings. You can do a whole series, and then you can even, once they start going south on you, you can use them dried as well. So maybe save some, hang them upside down, and let them get dried. Okay, this one is really in shadow back here, so I'm going to add more black, ivory black, and alizarin crimson. And you can kind of see that, and that's really for the center of it, and then back into this lighter mixture for, this is in cast shadow from the black base, is blocking light from this rose, and that is such a neat effect to get in paintings, get that shadow effect. I'm going to go a little bit lighter here, a little bit warmer with some more Cab Red Light, grabbing a little bit of my background color, painting around that dark center that I've just put in. And then we can even, paint a little more light, maybe a little more red. It's nice to have all these little piles of color that are all relatable to each other, and you can just kind of pull like, oh, okay, I need a little more red, need a little more light, rather than, kind of mixing everything into one pile. Maybe create these different piles of colors that are all related, so that you don't have to start your whole mixture over and over again. So maybe you have a lighter, more colorful mix over here with the Cab Red Light and titanium white, and then a more muted, and then a more darker, so on and so forth. Okay, I'm going to start to pull in some of these lighter values here with more white, Might even, gosh, this is a size 2 brush and might even need something even smaller, but we'll see if I can. These little roses are so tiny. See if I can get away with this for now. By turning my brush to the side. This is one nice thing about these filberts. One of the key things I think when it comes to starting to put the lights on here is, just not blending it in too much to the other color that you put down. And I would say too, kind of starting the stroke at the edge, the crisp edge of the petal, which is the outside edge of the petal, and then lifting towards the inside. These are going to be up here a bit easier because, they're top planes of the petals. So they're much, much easier to create the look of here. I'm going to put a little bit of Naples yellow in this. Same thing with like these really bigger, broader shapes of light. Those are a little easier to create. So you want to have all of your roses kind of facing different angles and different directions. So that they're also not just all facing you or facing the viewer. Like a bunch of smiley faces just looking at you. That happens more so with like, it's a weird effect with sunflowers or daisies or something, the ones that have that circular disc. Those can look really weird if you are they're all frontal, It's like there's no perspective at all. So be sure to kind of, when you're setting up your flowers, try to get some different angles. So this is a perpendicular plane here. It's going to have a bit more color. It's not really in shadow, but I also added too much white. So we need separation from the petals that are folded down, but we don't want it to be, as dark of shadow as, say, what's over here on the far right. So let me know if there's any questions along the way that you have. I'm also really curious to know, like, what is the greatest frustration and challenge you're facing right now when it comes to your painting? Like, what really is kind of stumping you so that I can support you, hopefully, in that too. Just coming back in with some of this shadow color on the index. All right, I have to go get a smaller brush. Let's see, a 0. There's usually a bit of that kind of more saturated, fiery red right in the center of these open-faced roses. Just building a little bit of form at a time here. Not in a rush. Kind of taking my time. find the shapes, find the forms. You know, and sometimes I feel like each painting kind of has its own pace, its own speed. Sometimes it feels a little slower. Sometimes it feels a little faster or speedier. Start with a little bit of pink here. I also like to move around, make sure I'm not staying too stuck too long on one particular rose. I want to build up all of these roses a little bit at a time. So for the lighter mixture, the Cab Red Light has more white and more Naples yellow in it. That's going to add a bit of warmth against the background, that kind of cool lavender gray background. Now, the roses that are open, like this one, the light is going to catch more on the far right-hand side. The inside of these types of flowers kind of act like little bowls where the left side falls into more shadow, or not really shadow, but it's more of like a local color, and then more light tends to catch on that far right hand side. Yep, definitely the smaller brush is helpful. Gives more control over these little intricate shapes. Start to build some light here on the top plane of this bottom rose. Make sure you're loading enough paint on the brush. On some of these, it can maybe feel a little simpler just to put down a bed of light and then paint some of the other tones and colors into them, especially if the shape is really small. Like, just make sure that you go for a quality of light. Sometimes it's just so much easier to do it this way than to try to paint all these little changes, all these little shapes. So I just put down some light and then painted some wrought umber, and this raw umber color for the shadow that's on the inside of this petal that's breaking away. And I just, if I know I'm about to go from a dark to a light, I just wipe any of that leftover paint off my brush. And like the open inside of this rose has more color. So adding back in some of the alizarin crimson, even some of the shadow that's on the inside as well. Bed of light. Yes, a bed of light. Yeah, I want to make it easier on ourselves. And larger, starting with larger shapes and then breaking it into smaller shapes tends to be easier. So you can do the same thing with like a darker mass. You can start a dark mass as well. It can also be like a mass of colors. So for example, like on the green leaves, I might start with, get rid of that booger, some ivory black and some cad yellow deep, a little bit of ultramarine blue or phthalo, but I think with all these pinks and purples, I'm going to go for the red based blue of ultramarine. So you can start kind of with a basic color on these green leaves. Basic, what's one color, one value, one shape. Establishing the shape first. Just one thing at a time. You know what I think too? One thing I'm realizing is that part of what makes this rose so appealing here is this nice big open petal. So I'm going to get that. Again, try to create a crisper edge on the outside. You can even just kind of utilize whatever is underneath the ground underneath. Just use less paint there is one way to do it. And if it's still not giving you the depth and contrast that you want, you can add back in some dark. But a light over a dark does create a cool. So you definitely want to have that enough dark in place. I just really like how open that petal is and how it kind of makes this rose a little bit larger, gives it a little more dominance in the picture, a little more of that star quality, like, look at me. You want to try to position your star quality flowers more towards the center of your bouquet, or center of the canvas. That's sort of the prime real estate area already. It's like, oh, we naturally want to go towards the center of the composition. Let's see, so sometimes it just feels a little bit like pickup sticks, like, oh, a little bit here, a little more there. This depends. How much do you want to give to it to really get it where you want it to be? Sometimes it happens right away, which is always so nice. And sometimes it doesn't. And it's all exactly as it should be. Okay. Now, part of what makes this rose really stand out, I'm going to go back to that dark green, and I'm going to make it a little bit darker with some black and ultramarine blue. Part of what also really makes this rose have its star appeal is the contrast around it. So these dark greens that are in the shadows, all these shadows make the lights more dynamic. And if you drag some of the white paint into it, that's okay. Just paint back over it with some dark. Not a big deal. Sometimes we just think we're doing things wrong, and we're not. It's just part of the process. It's like, oh, I zig this way and then I zag that way. So you kind of have to, we all kind of have to, as we're learning, get over the idea that, oh, there's some kind of perfect step-by-step process here that will lead to a reliable result every single time. And that you just don't know what it is, or somehow you're doing it wrong. At least that's the way I used to feel. I'll speak for myself on that one. And finally, one day I just discovered, like, oh, that's not true. That is just a story I've been telling myself about this whole thing. So, there's fundamentals we can learn. Certainly there's, some processes that, are a foundation, to start with. But then part of the joy and mystery of painting is that, it can tend to be different every time, a little bit different every time. And I think part of the discovery process is just kind of, as one of my coaches would say, dancing in the mystery. She's like, yeah, just try to dance in the mystery. Well, sometimes I've told her that I feel like I'm kicking and screaming on the floor in the mystery rather than dancing in it. Dancing sounds so nice. And then other times I feel like, have you ever seen that Elaine episode where Elaine dances on Seinfeld? Sometimes once I feel like I start to dance in the mystery and the unknown, it's like I feel like Elaine. Like, okay, I'm dancing, but it's very awkward. And that's how painting, I think, growing in our painting can feel too. It's just like, oh my gosh, I feel so awkward and uncomfortable and all of that kind of stuff. Very normal to feel that way. So I'm working a bit longer on this rose because it is so important in the picture. And if this one is working, then it really makes the others fall into place more easily. Dancing in the moonlight. Okay, so I feel like that's pretty good, pretty close to where I want it. Maybe another petal coming down here a bit more, maybe moving that petal down a bit more. Taking breaks too, and like stepping back from your painting, getting away from it so that you can see it with fresh eyes is also a very good idea. I think that could be a little bit bigger. You can also use your green with your red if you need to get some neutrals or some shadows for some of these little shadow planes separating the petal shapes. Okay, pretty happy with that, where that's at right now. Yay! Don't forget to celebrate along the way. Go me for sticking with that and really studying that rose, really pushing that mastery today. Really making sure that I'm not letting it be too easy, that I'm trying to see, how good can it get? All right. So I'm going to go back to that green and show you what I mean about building some more. Once you have a one basic value, one basic color, then how can you build more definition, more specificity on the object, more detail? So I'm going to start to bring in some light. This is going to have some Naples yellow in the mix, some yellow ochre for that side of the petal there that is kind of, it's got that crease, in the middle. And then there's a little bit of that kind of silvery light along the corner. Now also, if you want to really get this to more definition, I like to come back in with background color and just kind of get that edge a little bit sharper. Maybe modify the shape. Sometimes whenever we first put in the shape, it might be a little symbolic looking or a little too basic looking. So again, just kind of really setting the edges of that particular leaf. Put a little more light here, and then even just studying like where does their where is there just a more, maybe an apex of light, or maybe a little bit more of that coolness of light that's in the scene, so that it's not just all one, one color, one value. Being in Paris and going to the museums, like, I really appreciated how much they would just put into something as simple as a leaf. So for example, this goes a little touch darker on that corner, right? So that would be, kind of what I mean by, are we pushing enough towards a greater level of mastery? If you are struggling in your creativity, that could, as I mentioned in the beginning of the demo, that actually could be the thing that you're missing. Is, are you trying hard enough? Are you really pushing yourself? Or are you kind of, maybe sometimes, if you were honest with yourself, realizing that you're resting on your laurels perhaps, or feeling that you've maybe gotten into a comfort zone where maybe you're not feeling as challenged anymore? So all of us have to figure, we know the answer for ourselves. We have to figure those things out. What's my creativity needing this week, or just today in this painting? Do I need to try push myself a little more, or do I need to have more fun and let go and relax a bit more? What does it need from day to day? All right, so just getting a little bit of this glow, a little more alizarin crimson in here. And I want to start to bring in some of the light greens to kind of finish off the color story a bit more. So that's going to have a lot more of the cad lemon and Naples yellow. And actually this leaf here might just be that. Dancing in the moonlight. Oh, that song's in my head. Let's see. And then for a little bit darker, I'm going to add in some ultramarine blue. On these, you want to start where the light, these are coming out from the shadows, kind of catching the light a bit there. So you want to start that edge crisper there, and then where that green is in front of the vase, but it's still in the shadow, go maybe a little more colorful. I like to camouflage where it's meeting the rose. You don't really want to have that be too noticeable, especially if it's in the shadow. I feel like this leaf could be a little bigger. Just trying to pay attention to my negative space here. Sometimes whenever you're painting, things can get positioned too close together. So I'm just trying to make sure that I maintain some amount of negative space in between that leaf and the rose up above it. Usually you either want a good amount of negative space, or you want some amount of overlap. But empty space is always, always a good thing. I'm going to go for this darker green with some black and cad yellow deep and alizarin crimson for the stems. Really notice like where your eye pays attention to the stems against the background, rather than going through and like painting every stem by stem. Or what are these called again? What are they called? It's not coccyx, is it? Gosh, I never can remember this word. No matter how many times people tell me too, and I've looked it up, always forget it. But the green bit around I would say the stems are, you want enough of them so that the flowers feel supported and not just like they're levitating or something, but they are not as important as the other elements in the painting. So if you have to edit some of those out, or if you run out of room for all of them, that's okay. Please don't start your painting over. Like, who cares if you have all of these little green bits in there? It's not that big of a deal. And sometimes too, things like that can start to also get distracting and too busy. So I would say be kind of minimalistic, a little more, oops, I don't know what I did, more judicious with your greens. And be careful of the color of the greens too, I would say. Really look at the whole color of your whole painting. In this case, there's so many cool tones that, I'm being careful adding in that cad yellow deep, again, trying to be a little more careful about that because that is a very, very hot color. So I think we were talking about this week. In fact, I think it might have been Arena's painting or a couple of paintings that were submitted for the critique sessions this week, where I was mentioning, like, you want to decide, is your painting overall cool? Is it overall warm? And making sure that you're maintaining that balance. So in this case, yesterday's was more of a warm painting, warm and saturated. Today is more, cool. And I would say more kind of pastel colors. So anything that's going to get a little too hot or a little too maybe bricky looking, for lack of a better word to come to mind, might feel, just out of harmony, out of sync with the rest of the painting. Okay, so that's just kind of trying to study and understand, how colors work together, understand color design or color theory, what colors kind of go together, what don't. Again, some of that is just practice. Some people naturally have a handle on that better. I know I certainly didn't feel like I did, but I also feel like maybe I had a little bit of a handle on it with some of the work that I did in the early days with interior design and whatnot. Okay. So you always want to be pushing to the finish. And when I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to also say, if you don't think you're going to be able to finish the painting wet into wet that day, the caveat to that statement is leave enough unfinished if you know you're going to need to come back to it, because that can also kind of bite you in the ass too. It's like if you know, like, okay, I'm out of steam today, or I'm out of time, maybe this feels 60% finished or 70% finished, I would probably stop there and come back the next day or come back later. But if you know that you are close to the finish, let's say you're 75-80% there, and you have enough time, then start to prioritize what needs more resolution in order for it to be called finished. Now, and for some people, and also it might vary day to day in your own practice, some people might just want more time to play on that painting, more time to explore and experiment. So you might want to just work longer on it just because you want to. But you kind of have to know yourself, right? Like, are you really going to come back to it? Because if you're not, it's better to, in my experience, my personal experience, it's better to wrap it up, even if it doesn't feel like, oh, it's wrapped up perfectly. Because there's really nothing, I don't think, more demoralizing than having a stack of unfinished paintings that you didn't resolve, that you left kind of undone. So in that case, in my case today, that's where I'm at, is like, there is still quite a bit to be complete, and I don't think I'm going to come back and work on it another day. And, I'm running out of time on the demo. So the question starts to become, how little can I put in here to make these things feel more resolved and make the whole painting feel more resolved? What is missing, would be the question. And also, like, how little is missing, rather than, try to perfect each and every thing, each and every rose, obviously there's a big unresolved area down here, so that's going to be a priority. And then small finishing touches on some of these roses here, like transition into the shadows, just trying to make that transition a little more smoother. And that can be something as simple as just running your brush over the light and shadow edge and just kind of blending that edge. Could be pushing a little more shadow underneath the edge of light up here, and just in that spot, the benefit of starting, one thing I am always trying to teach artists is start at the kind of main event. Make sure you put enough time and energy into that main kind of star of the show rose or a vase. Make sure you get that finished looking enough, because that will carry a lot of that finishing weight through the rest of the painting. Sometimes it could even be, perhaps even eliminating something. If you need to, like eliminating a rose if needed. I would rather paint something out and have the painting be finished if I know I'm not going to go back to it, than to say like, oh, I have to do it all. This is not a punishing activity. This is supposed to be a rewarding activity, but sometimes we just, like to kind of break out the whip and be hard on ourselves. I'm just going around looking for, where there need to be a little more contrast, or a few more of these petal shapes, a little more light. If I am going to keep this rose here, how simply can I suggest the shape of it, like this little bit of light against the background, and just leave that basic color, a few petal shapes, leave that basic color of the shadow there. Sometimes too, just pulling paint away can create kind of a softer effect. Now I'm pulling in some yellow ochre here and there with my cab red light to kind of get a bit of a glow color. So stage 3, I talked about yesterday, I like to break the painting down into those 3 stages, and stage 3 always has reflected lights in it. So sometimes too, reflected lights can be like background color. In this case, since it's a lighter background, it can be background colors reflecting into a darker shadow plane. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start moving down towards the bottom. Get some medium on my brush. Still a little unclear what color to make this. I think I'm going to try to make it kind of a violet color rather than just brown. So we might need some of that raw umber just to neutralize. I'm going to use quite a bit of medium here just to get the ground covered. Camouflage this transition a bit here. Sneaky, sneaky. You really don't want a lot of attention being drawn to the horizon line back here, so just be mindful of that. And let's see. I want some overlapping edges on this back rose, taking it away from just that basic cylinder shape. And maybe go a little bit softer edge back there. And also that could be one that I choose to paint out if it's not coming together enough. It's kind of nice that it's there, but it's not required. It's not going to make or break the painting. If it's not, this one up front is a little more integral to the composition. Yeah, I think I will, because it just needs too much. Work. So, with the time remaining, I think that's probably the best choice. I'm going to get more bang for my buck somewhere else in the painting. So, do some cab red light and ivory black just to create, just some basic shadow back here. Sometimes you have to, as they say, kind of kill your darlings. Because I would have to do so much back here to make that work. I'd have to add in the stem back there. Soften that edge. Now that that rose isn't there, maybe I'll paint over that reflection with background color rather than with rose color on that back edge. So that makes sense why that's there. And the thing of it is like, nobody's going to know these. Obviously, you guys know these things because I'm sharing all of the inside private matters of painting with you. But, you know, when you're making these choices on your paintings, you have to decide what's best for you and best for, best for you on that painting that day. And, nobody's going to know. So don't feel like, oh, yeah, I can't do things like that. I have to do it all. It's like, I would rather, not sacrifice a finished painting than to feel that way. Oh, I need to go back to my smaller brush again. Okay, so on this rose on the bottom, we need to make sure it, and this one is kind of partially drying as well, so it's a little flatter too. But I just need to make sure that I've got enough of that cast shadow underneath. I'm going to try to come back in with more of this reflected light glow. I think it's legal to do that here. A little bit stronger. And then in this case, maybe more of those darker greens for the stem. So that it feels more supportive, more supported. I think since this has been drying, it's starting to go a little flat on the top. I'm going to give it a little more roundness. It doesn't feel quite right with the other roses in this case. So let's see if I can create a little more curve, a little more roundness there. Maybe just try to open it up just a little bit more. Come back into the inside, do a little bit of that as well on the inside. You always need, oh, I got too much of that cad red. You always need a little bit more definition in the center on these roses. So let's see if I can get that in there. Just trying to curve this shape a little bit more. Yeah, killing your darlings. And also sometimes whenever you're setting up your composition, everything might make sense whenever you first set it up, and then maybe somewhere along the way in the painting, you start to discover, oh, that's really kind of not adding anything. It's not really bringing anything to the party. So we want to make sure that everything is, has strong enough contribution to the picture too. So I guess in a way, it's like if you feel like you can eliminate it, I don't want to say you should because I hate that word. But basically, if you feel like you can eliminate it from the picture, then it kind of tells you really don't need it. I guess I would say you might like it, you might want it there, but you might not really. The picture just might not really need it. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a good indicator that it's a little, maybe a little superfluous. Is that the word? Or a little, yeah, maybe like a little icing on the cake kind of situation, but it's not really necessary. So some artists would tell you, well, then that means it shouldn't be in your picture, and I don't really want to say that, because I'm like, sometimes we just like the cherry on top of the cake, or some of us are what might be called maximalist versus minimalist. So I don't like to necessarily preach that it shouldn't be there, but like I say, it is just an indicator that you can definitely take it out and not hurt the painting. Sometimes it might also definitely make the painting stronger. So that's the main thing you want to keep an eye out for. Is it actually weakening the painting? If it is weakening the painting, you definitely want to take it out. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between something that's not really adding much or making the painting better or stronger per se versus something that is weakening the picture. Big difference, in my opinion. Something that's maybe not, adding a lot but you like it, I think is okay to keep in. It's adding because you like it. But if you have something in your picture that's taking away, you definitely want to eliminate that. All right, so I'm just trying to punch up the contrast there before wrapping this up. Let me know if you have any final questions before I go today. And most importantly, I hope all of you have an inspiring day and find some time to hopefully create or play, even if it's just for, 5-10 minutes. Maybe it's a little sketch in your sketchbook today. It's every creative act is important. It's really, really important to your well-being. So just keep that in mind too. Not just about a finished product. In fact, sometimes the more hung up you get on the finished product, that, like I say, can begin to start to add some pressure. Sometimes too much pressure to perform. So maybe you just need to play a bit more if you're in that situation. Also, reach out to people, get support. Ask for help. People love to help. Really, I'm digging this color. This alizarin crimson and ivory black is kind of like weighting the picture down a little bit down here. Just don't keep it all to yourself if you're struggling, I would say, with anything, just we're all in this together. Exercising your creativity and your expression is so important. It changes, every cell in your body. It changes your brain. It changes your happiness levels, your serotonin, so okay. So just taking a step back just to see if there's anything. Usually at the end, I'm just looking for, is there something that I did that I can, maximize any further, to make it have more impact. So I'm kind of thinking more of this reflected light here, maybe making that a little stronger. Especially with a pretty simple, more minimalist kind of setup like this, playing up areas like that might be a good thing to do. You don't always need more objects, but you might need more emphasis in an area or more contrast in an area. Maybe it's more specific brushwork, So you can go through the list and see like, no, there's something's working well about that, but maybe it can, maybe I can just make it even stronger. It's not a checklist of I painted every single object, That's not really the name of the game here. It's not like done. I did all of the things, you know. Um, but standing back, I'm really taking a look to see if anything stands out to you as you stand back. Taking a Monet moment and seeing how all the pieces maybe are coming together. Like whenever I stood back, I felt like, oh, I'm missing a petal here, need a couple other little petals there on that main flower. Is anything maybe detracting a little too much or feel a little superfluous, right? So I'm not feeling like this reflected light is really adding that much to the tabletop. Maybe I'll just kind of quiet that down, simplify that. Or maybe it could have been that it was just too bright or too much or too close. So it could be that, it's helpful to be there, but maybe it needs to be a little more subtle or something. And at this stage, I'm usually not looking at my subject matter at all. I'm just looking at the painting. I'm just looking at the painting and that's it. Like, oh, I like that, but maybe it could be a little stronger. Like maybe this little leaf, I really liked how that was kind of swooping up and back, but maybe I need a little more of that here or there. I don't know. You don't know until you try. So, but I would say at some point you do want to stop looking at the setup and start looking just at the painting. Just kind of notice where your eye goes. Is anything kind of sticking out like a sore thumb? That's one way that you train your artistic eye as well. And you are not a slave to copying. You're building that muscle of, judging the picture yourself. Okay, everybody. I hope that this has been helpful to you today. It's been so much fun painting with you. Oh, good. Arena, I'm glad that was nice to see. Yeah, sometimes these lives are really good because you can see, more of the problem solving aspect of things. Like, oh, this, other than, a lot of videos nowadays are very edited and, most of mine are not, as you guys know. I really like to make sure everybody is seeing like the full process and not just, me trying to look good per se or try to be impressive. It's like, no, it's helpful to, as a student, to be able to see like, oh, okay, there is sometimes this kind of, back and forth when it comes to working on a painting. And sometimes you put things in and then you realize, oh, it's not really working like I thought it was going to work. So you make changes and adjustments. Okay. Yay. Good. I'm glad this was helpful. I'm really glad it was helpful. Thank you for telling me that. I really appreciate that. Okay. All right. Let me see if there is any more questions before we go. Da, da, da. Oh, whoa. Almost lost my light. Okay, let's see. Okay, Tamara, thank you, Tamara. She says, love watching your process. Thanks, Kelly. You're so welcome. Natalia says, thank you so much, Kelly. You are so welcome. Susan says, I love watching you paint tabletops, I guess because I struggle with making them look soft and painterly. So thank you. You are so, so welcome. Yeah, try to think of your tabletops as like really mostly part of your background is what I would recommend. Okay. And maybe a little bit of a mirror of your objects, but mostly you want it to kind of be similar to your background where it's just kind of quieter and sets off your foreground. Arena says, it's so informative and liberating when you painted the right side rose out. Yes. For me too. Yeah, and so sometimes, that's the right choice to make, and just kind of notice I just notice like how I feel in my body whenever I make those choices. Like, okay, yeah, just let that go. Just let that go. That's not really needed. I don't need to prove myself. All right. Thank you, Lynn. I'm so glad you love the rose on the table. That was probably the hardest one out of the whole bunch for me. And it was definitely one where it was just kind of like, there's just something about this particular rose today sitting on the tabletop that is not clicking. I'm not clicking with it. It's, I've painted it over and over again. I'm sure you saw me struggling with that rose and trying to figure out like trying to strike a balance there. And so sometimes there's just a point where you just have to accept like, this is where as far as it's going to go today for this particular object. Shadows not needed from the roses. Is that, you mean in the background, Kathy? I'm not sure. I think maybe you're talking about like cast shadows on the background. You don't necessarily need them, but if you like that light and shadow pattern in the background, you can definitely use that. We've been making announcements about this on my social media and for probably about a week now. So be sure that you make sure that you are getting notifications from my Facebook page. So go to my Facebook page, make sure that you like the page first of all. And I think there's a way that you can, say like, I want to be notified for this page. But yeah, we've been announcing this February challenge for about a week now, just so you know. But it's going to be every morning, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. And I'll just be kind of painting all different kind of stuff. Right now I just have these roses, so I'm working on roses yesterday and today. What else? I think that's it. There is only going to be one day this month that I won't do one, and that's on the 19th because I'll be in New York City that day. Yay! So glad to be so close to New York City. Okay, wonderful, everybody. Thank you. You're so welcome, Sabrina. You are so welcome, Marty, Robson. So good to see all of you here today. Yay. Okay, awesome. And I'll see hopefully some of you tomorrow. And if you missed this, answer any of those questions. Leave your comments, leave your questions, leave your scale of 1 to 10 where you're at in the comments below if you're watching on replay. Mwah. Wishing you all so much inspiration and happy painting.